The next ancestor I want to touch on is, her name may be a little bit difficult to pronounce, but it's Aquatune. Aquatune, a princess of the Kimbundu people, of the Angolan people, and coming out of the edge of the Congo in the Battle of Mbuila, she commands 10,000 men. She is fighting to preserve her kingdom and her freedom, but she is captured by the enemies of her people, and she is sent in the slave ships. She fights back every way she can. She takes her mind out of her body and puts it someplace where they can't get at it in order to harm her. When they take her to Brazil, when she gets off the slave ship in Brazil, Sister Ayo, so good to see you. The sister, her mind comes back to her. She jumps off the wharf into the ocean and tries to walk back to Africa.
That's right. Wow. That's right.
They get her back. They restrain her. They scrub her with brushes. They use a gunpowder and lemon solution so that they can cleanse her body. They oil her and present her up on the auction block in Recife, Brazil. Well, she is, but something is happening. Again, the ancestors are at work. They cannot understand this phenomena. There are people from her kingdom who are showing her obeisance in the slave market.
That's right.
They haven't lost their African mind, not in its entirety. And when they saw royalty, they acknowledged the royalty the way they would have done it
at home
in the village. That's right. That's right. And now the white folks are worried. The Brazilians are saying, well, what can we do with a woman who is so powerful? She makes people remember who they are. 3,000 miles and an ocean later. How can this be? Well, they never come up to an answer, so they decide to punish her. Now, the farms in Brazil are called fazendas during this particular period. This is the maelstrom of the transatlantic slave trade. The Ma'afa, some brothers even call it the Magabaisi. Call it whatever you will. Let's think about it like this. Between about 1650 and 1820, 4 kidnapped, captured Africans were brought to the Western Hemisphere for every 1 European. Let me say that again. From about 1650 to 1820, 4 enslaved, kidnapped, captured Africans were brought to the Western Hemisphere for every 1 European. That's right. I know y'all heard about all the Europeans just waiting on them to build a Statue of Liberty. Well, but what you need to understand is we were here first. We were here in larger numbers. It's in 1840 that Europeans begun to come here in numbers larger than the enslaved Africans arrived.
That's right. That's right.
In Brazil, for every kidnapped, captured African that arrived in North America, 12 arrive in Brazil.
That's right.
Okay, 12 arrive in Brazil. You don't simply have a concept of the vastness of the transatlantic slave trade until you look at numbers like that. You just don't really understand. So Aquatune finds herself on the plantation. They're still doing it. They're still giving her obeisance. This is like the scene in Coming to America. When they see Eddie and one of the brothers breaks down to give that his props to a king from his own land. So they cannot break her spirit. They already know she has the ability to take her mind out of her situation. So what they cannot do to her mind, they do to her body. They make her a breeder. And they give her to the most hideous, the most empty-minded black folk they can to impregnate her. They make her in charge of what's called mooring cattle. She's got to go out and get the beasts, often unwilling. They don't want to come in from the field because they're chilling and eating, like most of us would be. And they put her in charge, even with her belly swollen, with another body inside. Aquatune refuses to bow her neck. She schemes. She gets away. She takes a group of enslaved Africans, from the plantation, and she takes them to the ultimate Quilombo. And most of you know the story of the Quilombos. You know that actually that's a Kimbundu word for settlement. There were thousands of them in colonial period Brazil. The good news is that many of the Quilombos, which still exist today, are now getting land rights after waiting hundreds of years. She will be a significant, now some historians say she founded Palmares. Others say she was a guiding spirit, if you will, a spirit of the house. This is that, and you say, well, how does this relate to Pan-Africanism? Understand this, that if we accept as a thumbnail definition of Pan-Africanism, Africa for Africans at home and abroad, what if you ain't in Africa at the time? You bring Africa to you.
That's right.
And so Aquatune built, she refined, she expanded Palmares, a city-state, an African city-state in the heart of colonial period Brazil.
That's right.
Perhaps 10,000 acres, 30,000 people, Native Americans, Africans, and a handful of renegade whites as well, live under her rule. She does, and I cannot tell you how touching it is to find that she used African traditions.
Right.
I write in Black Inventors from Africa to America how she sponsored the use of African forges in order to make metal in the African way. She wanted to, I have no doubt there was an altar somewhere in Palmares so that you would never forget who you are.